Well, hey again, everybody. You know, if I was going to make this video, I sure as hell better have some good evidence, right? Fuck. I have no links. Nothing. I was just thinking about this subject a little earlier. Somebody asked me, what do you think about aliens? And it was just right after I was getting ready to make a video talking about my thoughts on UFOs and aliens. And it's probably because I'd mentioned it in a previous video briefly, the recent releases by the, Navy and Air Force. I believe it was the Air Force, actually. But I guess it was naval grounds, if you will, because this Tic Tac UFO was flying right along the ocean, and they were filming it at these high speeds, and it's pretty interesting footage. But in today's world, you can't tell if anything is completely biased or not. So I guess in this video, I would really like to discuss UFOs, my personal take on them. Of course, I have absolutely no evidence, and I really don't care to. But 3 people, I think, asked me recently what I thought about UFOs. One subscriber said, what do you think about UFOs and DMT entities? And so that kind of throws a crimp in everything, doesn't it? No, I think I can pretty much sum that one up. I believe that UFOs exist. As far as, let me just say, I believe that I believe that beings have visited this planet before. But I draw the line there. And when it comes to DMT entities, they get mistaken for aliens. Now, for those who don't know, DMT entities are the creatures that you encounter when you've consumed DMT, smoked DMT. And they're very mild compared, or I should say there's milder versions when you take ayahuasca, which is basically DMT taken with an MAOI, or monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which prevents your gut from breaking down the DMT in your gut. Because if you take it orally, it won't do anything unless you take an MAOI. So this ayahuasca is basically a combination of DMT and this MAOI, which you do encounter entities, demons, spirits, snakes. The whole history of psychedelics is directly tied to shamanism and alien entities and beings that we can't explain. The question isn't whether we've seen them or whether there are similar stories, but whether that means anything. Whether or not individuals have actually connected with these beings, or if it's something completely in the mind. And one might go as far as to say, well, the mind is the universe and we're all one and everything is the same, so if you consume a substance, you are connecting with that entity. It's real, as it would be. It's just a different dimension. What can you do with that? I mean, really, honestly, what can you do with that? If you take a psychedelic, like smoking DMT, and it lasts a few minutes, and you encounter these weird feelings and these entities, then you leave and they're gone, well, that doesn't help us in this dimension. So, to move on, most people are thinking about entities in this dimension, what we would call aliens. And the difference between aliens and entities would be entities are ethereal, if you will, and you can't touch them, whereas aliens would be physical and you could actually make contact with them, that they're living on our plane, if you will. So, with all that hot air out of the way, I'll start off with my wife I remember my wife telling me a story when we got together about UFO she saw over Tigard. Freaked her the hell out. Tigard, Oregon, it's a city. A red one, right, lifted right above the freeway or on the horizon, and she knows what she saw. She's a smart woman. But she doesn't tell the story, because if you do, it's like, okay, I saw something red in the sky. Could be anything. It's been 25 years, right? My experience is a little bit different, but very similar in the way that I regard it. My main experience that I've had, and this is not, psychedelics are something completely different, and I won't even go there for this video. I'll talk about my physical experience, and my oldest son and I were camping together, father and son camping trip. And he was about 21 at the time, maybe. We went camping up by Mount Adams in Washington here, which is a well-known spot for sightings of strange lights. And we were that night having a good time, laying under the stars, and for several hours we were just stargazing, at least 5 hours or so before we saw this, we had seen planes fly over, small planes, jets. We'd seen satellites come and go all the way from dusk until later on. And if you're not aware, satellites right at dusk are super bright because the sun is set below the horizon, so it's still shining up on the satellite, but not on you. So you will see the satellites flicker and sparkle in the sky. It's amazing. And then they'll hit a point where you won't see them anymore, and then they'll be seen for a second and then not seen anymore. And it's a pretty cool thing to see. But at a certain point in the night, when you've looked at the sky for long enough, you know what you're looking at. So 2 a.m. or so rolls around, and we're laying there, and all of a sudden this satellite, what we think is a satellite, comes cruising across the sky, and it was from approximate south to north. And it's cruising across the sky, and all of a sudden it slows down and stops. And, he's like, "Are you seeing this?" And I was like, "Yes." And we were both wondering if we were tripping, if maybe we were seeing something that wasn't there. It stops, and it kind of moves like an ant. It stops like this, slows and stops, then it starts to move kind of in a crescent, and it stops again, and then it moves over here, like it's searching for something. And then it slowly starts moving again, and I said, "Wow, is that a ship?" We were just talking about it. I don't recall the specific what we were saying, but I said, "God, I hope it lands down here. That would be awesome." And then all of a sudden it got really bright. And not just like a satellite gets bright briefly, like I was saying, but it started to get brighter, and it looked like it was coming directly towards us. It was like still in the sky. And I said, no, never mind. And then it instantly got dim again. And then it continued along its journey. We still trip on about that. I mean, it was a weird experience watching this thing traverse the sky, but the fact that it moved from its orbit is absolutely, I cannot there's no way I can discount what I saw. However, we in our minds tend to say, maybe I was deluded, maybe I didn't really see that, maybe I was high, maybe anything, I was tired, anything could have happened. But we both saw this and discussed the specifics later, and each laid out our own details. And think what you want, I'm just laying that out for the individuals who have asked, hey, what is your experience with, UFOs or anything like that? What do you think? Because my previous 2 videos have been laughing at conspiracies and all the BS online, but I do believe, of course. I just know that it's the fact that I'm attracted to UFOs and aliens, it's because everyone is. It's a really interesting subject, and it makes a lot of money. So, yeah, there are people selling you alien mugs and everything else you can imagine. I don't know what they really look like. The entities I've seen look nothing like the ones that are shown on mugs, but those are in my mind as opposed to real world, and I prefer to stick to real world when I'm talking about UFOs. The Navy released that Tic Tac footage of them following that one across the ocean. There was another one of this, what looked like a gimbal system, which I don't like speaking tech, talking shop or tech terms, whatever, because I don't know where people are at. But a gimbal is basically the way a camera can balance without losing its, without wiggling, basically. A gimbal system allows a camera to kind of wiggle and move with a shaky camera, and if you look up the footage, you'll see what I'm talking about. Could have been anything. Could have been set up, could have been staged, who knows. A lot of people believe there's going to be some, what is it? There was Project Blue Book in the 60s, but now there's Blue Beam, which is this idea that everyone thinks that there's going to be, not everyone, but a huge sect of the conspiracy community thinks there's going to be a Project Blue Beam where all of a sudden the government's going to declare one day there's a government, or there's a alien invasion, and that they're basically doing it. I actually don't know why they're doing it. I guess to keep the people under control. I mean, the people are already under control. If there's an alien invasion, the people are already pretty much suckers to their system. So I don't know what it would gain, but it's just another kind of, weird, absurd thing that gets passed around. But the reality of UFOs is probably much more mundane. But if even one UFO is captured and understood, that's more exciting than any fiction novel I could imagine. In other words, I don't know the story about Area 51, if it was real or not. I've looked at the idea that it was set up to look like a conspiracy. I've read the idea that it was just a mishap and they mistakenly identified it as something foreign. Or I've also heard, that's just the very first story of many. And that doesn't include, there's the Barney and Betty Hill story in the 50s everybody repeats. I'm trying to go through I'm well versed in these things, and I was obsessed with it through the 90s and 2000s. I loved the X-Files. It led me into my whole conspiracy realm from like 96 on to 2010 or so. And maybe I'm an expert on what UFOs aren't, but I refuse to speculate on what they are. And so that's where I stand on it. I just wanted to kind of lay that out for people who had asked. It's a fascinating subject, and I think there is something to it. As I stated before, I don't know if the UFOs that have been seen recently and captured on film are government-made or actual UFOs, and that's one of the most difficult things. This is why the older videos and older pictures and older stories are almost more credible than the modern ones. Because with modern CGI and all the governments working on these various projects and trying to defy gravity, I wouldn't be surprised if some European country had already come up with a UFO model and they're just flying around kind of teasing our Air Force to see what we can do. Don't know. As far as they look more like drones to me. That would make the most sense. If a government can make a drone that can fly like a UFO, they've got it made. And perhaps if they already captured something 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and have this, technology already that they've been back reverse engineering, then of course they have it by now. So I don't know what to think. Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and take care. Peace.